Many years ago, when I was in this for ministry, not for money, I worked with a band called Zion Ministries. It wasn't really a band; it was really a retreat organization. So I got involved with an organization called Zion Ministries because I felt like it was a good balance of music and teaching. I was involved in that for a few years, however many years that might be. We made a custom album, and "Sing Your Praise to the Lord" was the first song on the album, and that song probably has had more to do with flip-flopping my life around than anything else, any other single event or thing.
Welcome to Rich Mullins Between the Songs podcast. My name is Chris Marchand, and my co-host is
Joe Cook.
We are two self-professed, clinically diagnosed Rich Mullins superfans, and we are tracking our way through every single one of his albums. This is episode number 2, and we'll be going over his first album, not his first studio album, but his first independent album that he did with his band, Zion, in the early 80s. And we actually have a really special guest on today. Joe, tell us who that is.
All right, we have one of the founding members of Rich's band, Zion. Zion, we should also mention, was more than a band. It was a ministry. It was a teaching and music ministry that Rich was a part of. And Beth Lutz, who performed and toured with Zion and did tons and tons of concerts and one album as a group with Rich, and was a friend of Rich's all the way through the rest of his life. She is going to be on to tell her story of how she got to meet Rich, how she got to know him, work with him, and how she played a very key part in getting a tape of Rich in the hands of the people that made his career and really made him Rich Mullins. It's a great story.
Now, one of our approaches is we are giving people, in a sense, like way more information than you can take in. And so this is a long episode. And so a part of that I want to offer to our listeners is a couple of websites that would come in really handy as you listen to this album. One is our website. It's betweenthe.songspodcast.com, and there is an article that you can check out. If you click on the news tab, and it'll be under news, and Beth was kind enough to give us her own commentary on the album, Behold the Man, and also an introduction to the album. And there's even some images from the album itself that you just can't find this album anywhere, so she scanned it, and we have some of the scans. And so what you can do is you can read her commentary, listen to a track. Do it how you want. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and I would totally recommend that if you're listening right now and you have not heard this album, stop listening.
Pause.
Hit pause. Go listen to the record. You're going to appreciate what we talk about over the next couple of hours a lot more if you've heard the album.
Yeah, immerse yourself in the songs a little bit. And check out our own page. But there's two other websites that are kind of quite fascinating. One is a site that, for me, is legendary. It had a huge impact on my own life in the years after Mullins' death. And now it's called kidbrothers.net. It's also kind of called Calling Out Your Name. And it's just this compilation of all kinds of Rich Mullins material. Of course, there's the lyrics from the album, but there's even chord sheets. And there's lots of transcripts of interviews, and I believe his release magazine essays,
concert transcripts.
So you can, we call this Between the Songs. Well, a lot of the things that Rich Mullins said was between the songs, and you get to see what he said in some of the concerts. So check out kidbrothers.net. And the reason I say that, especially for this Zion album, is I believe the man who operates that website, he put an introduction to the Behold the Man album, as well as all the lyrics. And remember, this is an album that people just can't buy it. It's available on Joe's Ragamuffin Archive on YouTube, but if you want to buy it, I bet you can find one for pretty expensive prices on eBay.
And very rarely. They come up every once in a blue moon. There was a copy of this album that was signed by Rich, was actually on eBay about a month ago.
And it sold for?
About $215, something in that neighborhood.
$200 for a very rare Rich Mullins record. So, but check out Kid Brothers, and it's a good resource. And then also, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but it's Audio RI, Audio RI, or Audiori. I don't know how to say it. But it's
Audiori?
Audiori?
Audi or I?
Audi or any? Audiori? No. Okay, so
Oreo?
It's Oriata Audo .net. It's
We'll put a link on the site.
We'll put a link on the site. Audiori.net/Rich Mullins, and this is kind of what's known as the Rich Mullins timeline. Do you know who operates this?
This is Eric Townsend operates.
Who is that?
It's
just a dude.
It's a dude.
Okay,
Some random dude who runs the Rich Mullins timeline, and it has for I think about as long as the KidBrothers.net.
Is it really? See, I have only recently discovered this.
Oh, this has been up there for years.
Has it really? Yeah, check out the timeline. It's kind of fascinating. I'll get to this in a little bit, but what I was able to do was look at this timeline and figure out the Rich Mullins concerts that I went to. I was able to go, because there was one concert that I was like, I don't even remember. I was too young to remember where I was, and I was like, where was this? It was some small congregation in Illinois, some church. And so I think I was able to locate the actual concert, and I owe that to the timeline there, kind of to the details that he was able to put up there. So
yeah, and the cool thing about that timeline, it was sort of stagnant for a number of years, and then in the last few years, he's really started updating it again. Mm-hmm. And as because there's been a lot of with the social media boom, a lot of new information has kind of gotten out there. And people have been able to connect with each other and
keep adding to it.
And yeah, so new stuff has been added to the timeline, and it's really a great resource.
Yeah. So here's one thing. We have a lot to talk about, and Joe and I are going to offer our own commentary on this album.